Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to look at my spreadsheet called Timeline Phrases. Remember, you can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. You can't get to the description box on your TV. So if you're on your phone, tablet, desktop, laptop, just click on the description box and you'll see a link for my spreadsheet. There's 2 people on here right now as I'm making this video. Okay, so I always like to do this for the benefit of anyone that's new to the channel because we don't always come here. What this is, it's a tally of the number of general conference talks that include these words or phrases, and they're tallied by year. How do I get this number? You go to this website called Scripture Citation Index by BYU, and among other things, you can search general conference talks going back to 1942. So in this case, just as an example, I searched for the term second coming. You have 349 results, and then I just count them up. I count them up, and then I put them on this. Okay, so the most recent year is at the top, and then you scroll down to go back in time, back to 1942. And this is a very telling exercise. And what I want to show you is something new that I've put on here. Something that I'm calling the Missouri Anomaly because I searched a couple key things and it yielded an interesting result. It's an idea that I've played with before, but this time I kind of fleshed it out. And I don't know. I just want to show you. I think it's kind of exciting to think about. So before we get to that, I just want to show you some of what we've already come across. I've searched many different words and terms, as you can see. And just to give you an idea why this is useful is you'll see certain concepts come to life or die off. Sometimes it's pretty dramatic. So for example, I have this collection of words and phrases: Jewish, Jerusalem, Hebrew, Judaism, Israel, whenever the context is the state of Israel, the modern nation state of Israel, and Muslim. And you can see here, look where my mouse is. I'll actually just kind of highlight this area, like right around here, you see a spike, you see an uptick for all these words and phrases. It's almost like the church is starting to think more about the Jewish world and the Muslim world. And you can see that in church news and newsroom and Deseret News. There's more and more contact with the Jews and Muslims. And it's showing up in General Conference. And so that could signal a shift of where we're at in this dispensation. When Christ comes, I think there's going to be a huge shift to the Jews. I don't know if all of them are going to convert when Christ comes. We know that when he comes to the Mount of Olives, it seems like at least that group will accept him. I don't know if it's going to be throughout the entire world. All Jews are going to accept him. But we do know that there's going to be missionary work still. There's going to be lots and lots of missionary work in the millennium. And if not with the Jews, because they all convert and accept the Messiah, maybe it's going to be with the Muslims. That's a key population. Last time I checked, I think they make up 1/4 of the world's population. So when you go back in time, you don't see as much. Okay. It's even more apparent if you just focus on these columns right here, but you still see it with these other ones. But this one's more obvious: Judaism, State of Israel, Muslim. Notice this clustering right here. You go back in time, and there's much less. It's much more sporadic. And you don't have anything for those columns from 1942 until 1957. Nothing at all. So something is going on right here. And it seems to coincide with President Nelson's presidency, which began right here in 2018. So that's one example. Another one, you have ongoing restoration. You have the exact phrase ongoing restoration. And then with this one, it's anything that's like ongoing, but the word is different from restoration, but it's referring to the ongoing restoration. So look at these two columns right here. Let's go back in time, and you don't really see that phrase at all. At all. At all, at all. So suddenly there's a lot of focus on the ongoing restoration. And during President Nelson's presidency, we have seen a lot of changes, a lot of updates, uh, a lot of significant milestones. And I think that's just going to continue. Another one that I like, eyes to see, as well as it's never been more important, imperative, needed, etc., things like that. So look at these two columns. You can see pretty much during President Nelson's presidency, you have this solid block where each year you see these phrases, and there's definitely an uptick. You go back in time, and it thins out. You don't see it a whole lot as you go back. So it seems like right now we really need eyes to see and ears to hear, and it's never been more important, imperative, needed compared to decades past. So yeah, you get the idea. If you're new, do you understand? One other one, I always like, oh, here we go. I move these around, and whenever I do a video, sometimes it gets mixed up. Here, you just pay attention to this dark red area right here, this cluster for Second Coming. Noticed when you look in, previous years, you have lighter colors. There's an uptick in the 70s. But nothing like what you see during President Nelson's presidency. You get all these dark colors. Hastening, prepare the world, higher, holier, coming days, incoming days, and then my personal favorite, final phase. Go back in time, and you see a lot more white and the light pink colors. So it's very, very telling. Now, when you go to the very end of the spreadsheet, so I more or less have these organized by, you can see the lines right here as I quickly scroll by. You see how it's like, there's like a line right here, and then it shifts down, and then it shifts down. I have these organized by, basically by year. The year that this term has the highest tally for a given year during President Nelson's presidency. So I have them kind of like organized that way. For some of you, that'll make sense. For others, it won't. And I'm sorry, I can't explain it more than that. Hopefully, if you look at it long enough, you'll understand how it's organized. Okay, when you get to the end over here, you have a bunch of phrases and words that we haven't seen in a long time. So, for example, in what's currently row KO, hour is not yet. That phrase hasn't shown up since 2004. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe the hour is nigh, and maybe the hour is yet, or it will soon be yet. I know that's not proper English. You have other words, times of the Gentiles. This is one that some people think it still needs to be fulfilled, or they think they have a certain conception of what's that's supposed to look like. I actually have a playlist about that. If you want to find out why that's not true and what it means for the gospel to start going to the Jews, watch my playlist, because guess what? Our prophets and apostles have actually spoken about that. So I choose to believe what they say. But you also kind of see it in General Conference. The last time that we saw that phrase, times of the Gentiles, 1977. It has not come up since 1977. That's before I was born. How old were you in 1977? Okay, so those are the ones I want to show you there. Now, I decided to look up, I already had Kirtland, I already had Kirtland Temple, I had Ohio, I had Missouri, but I decided that I wanted to add Far West, Anomaly in Independence, Missouri. Because as you can tell, now that I live here, I'm very focused on those areas, and I see a lot of things happening in Missouri, and I've been trying to chronicle that on my channel. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen that with me as I reported it. There are things happening here. And so I wanted to check those locations and see what it looked like. As I did so, I came across this, which I want to read this first. This is when I was searching for Independence, Missouri. And what I'm about to read to you, I've added a new topic or a new misconception for my spreadsheet called quotes, common misconceptions. So this is now the new row 26. The church isn't going to build a temple on the temple lot in Independence, Missouri. Some people are of that frame of mind. Okay, so we're looking at, let's see, this is the October 1969 General Conference, Elder Eldred G. Smith, Patriarch to the Church. Okay, he says in this section, in accordance with commandment, the Kirtland Temple, oh my gosh, sorry. In accordance with commandment, the temple in Kirtland was built in which the keys to the sealing blessings were revealed. The keys of the gathering of Israel were restored. The promise made by Malachi was fulfilled that Elijah the prophet would come before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. I would like to hear thank the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for taking good care of that building. It has fulfilled its original purpose, and the last time I saw it, I was pleased with its good condition. Well, little did he know that in 2024, it would come back into the church. And even though it fulfilled that purpose, I think it still has more to do. It's still a temple. When I went to go tour it, the day of the eclipse and the day after General Conference last year in April, the missionary said that it's still considered a dedicated temple. And right now we have an agreement where the other splinter groups can still use it. I have to go back and remind myself, but I think it's the agreement lasts for 15 years or something like that. And then after that, we'll see how things go. But I think that it's still going to be used for church functions in the future. Okay, continuing. It is crazy. This is back when the Community of Christ was known as the RLDS. Okay, then he goes on. Land in Independence, Missouri has been dedicated for a temple to be built sometime in the future. So the church expects to build that temple, you guys. It's not an abandoned thing. It goes along with I have another misconception on here that says we've been excused from building the city of New Jerusalem in Jackson County, Missouri, or that now Salt Lake is going to be, that's going to be the New Jerusalem, and that's the center place, the whole Missouri thing. No, that's over. No, that's not true. It's not true. It's on the church website, Gospel Topics and Questions. President Nelson has talked about it in his book, Daily Joy, as well as Teachings of Russell M. Nelson. Sorry, I always beat that one over the head because it drives me crazy. But, okay. Land in Independence, Missouri has been dedicated for a temple to be built sometime in the future, and I would like to thank those who are taking good care of that property. The Lord bless them for so doing. Then the temple in Nauvoo was built with a baptismal font and special rooms for endowments and ceilings for both the living and the dead. This building was destroyed, but since then there have been 13 temples built, all active at present, with 3 more now getting started in construction, many more to follow. How the times change. The Nauvoo temple has been rebuilt. It's kind of crazy to think that when I was born, it was not there. I don't know what, I suppose it was an empty temple lot. Just like how when we go to Far West or the temple lot in Independence, Missouri, you go to Anomaly to the public square where the temple would have been built. You have the city of Seth. And by the way, I have a video about that coming out soon. Actually, I don't know when I'm going to schedule this. Maybe I've already published it. I don't know. But you have these temples, these like empty temple lots that are just waiting. Just waiting. And at one time, that was the case for the Nauvoo temple. But under President Hinckley's presidency, it was rebuilt. And I expect for these other ones to be rebuilt too. And that's a good segue into what I found. So let me show you how it's gone. So we have Ohio, Kirtland Temple, and Kirtland. Okay. So you can see this darker area right here in the year 2020. Again, it's been a while since I've researched this or talked about it, but I seem to remember an article stating, or maybe it was on the Community of Christ website, I'm not sure, but somewhere said that talks began in 2021 for the Kirtland Temple for, arranging the purchase of the Kirtland Temple. And so I can't say that this is related to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if, church leadership, those that are in the know, start talking more about the Kirtland Temple the year before as they're discussing it, like as they're about to discuss it the next year, or as they have like maybe initial contact with Community of Christ or something like that. Maybe only a few people were in the know, like say, 5 people, maybe not even all the apostles knew, but could you imagine going in and having meetings with President Nelson, the first presidency, and they start talking a lot about the Kirtland Temple? And so you kind of follow suit. You're inspired and prompted by the Spirit as you're writing your general conference talk, but you also follow church leadership. Maybe it's something like that. But whatever the case, from 2020 to 2023, and then definitely in 2024, but from 2020 to 2023, there was a general uptick in talking about Ohio, Kirtland Temple, or just Kirtland, which could have reference to the temple or the city. Depending on the talk, you'd have to go back, but I just did a search just for Kirtland. And you see there was an uptick. There was. You go back in time, you don't see that. For Kirtland, maybe. Kirtland Temple, not so much. You don't see really a comparable time. Maybe here in the 80s. Which that's kind of interesting because it was 1984 when the RLDS changed their name to Community of Christ. So I don't know, maybe back then the church was thinking about, oh, well, if they're going that direction, they may not care so much. Who knows? I don't know. But aside from that, you don't really see too many comparable times. Maybe one or two. So this is what we saw. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. I already had these 3 that we're looking at. I already had this on the spreadsheet. I also already had Missouri. And interestingly, you see the same thing with Missouri. When you look at Kirtland Temple 522-533, it's very similar to Missouri 523-432. It's nearly identical. It almost has the same signature, you could say. It could be that in some of those talks, they're talking about, oh, the Saints were in Missouri and then they went to Kirtland. And so maybe that's why they have a similar signature. I'm not sure. I'm not going to analyze every single one of those talks. But you do see something similar with Missouri. So it makes you wonder, could there be something in the works for Missouri? Could it be the Kirtland Temple? Could it be something with Adam on Diamond? Could it be the Temple lot? Now, unfortunately, when it comes to the Temple lot, I'm a little bit more, I shouldn't be, but I'm a little bit more pessimistic about that happening soon, just based on off of everything that I've researched about the Church of Christ Temple lot that owns the Temple lot. But I don't know. No one is exempt from what's going on in the world with secularism and churches disintegrating, losing membership, becoming more secular, stepping away from traditional beliefs like paying tithing, especially with the rising generation of all these churches that they're much more influenced by the world and don't hold on to those original beliefs. So I don't know, but for some reason we see a similar signature here between Kirtland Temple and Missouri. Okay, so now Let's move on to, oh yeah, I already had Jackson County on here too. I forgot. I had already looked this up. Um, what's interesting is that you see an uptick in talking about Jackson County starting in 2016. You go back in time, you have this long period of time, 1999 to 2015, where Jackson County doesn't come up. And then all of a sudden, I mean, it's not as dramatic as over here, but all of a sudden it's just, you have these 4 times, including in 2024. Okay, you go back, you see it a little bit right here. And then much more from the 60s to the 80s. I think I know why, though. This is the period of time when the Independence Visitor Center was being constructed. This was the period of time that President Alvin R. Dyer was under President David O. McKay's leadership was oh wait, hold on. No, I guess that would have been more like the late 60s, but it still would have been around this period of time, late 60s, early 70s, that all this stuff was going on with the lands here in Missouri. Purchasing, the church purchasing land at Anomaly, and then doing the beautification of like the far west temple site and all sorts of stuff. So there was a lot of activity going on with the Missouri lands in this time frame. So that makes sense to me. And then you go back, and then it kind of dies off. You don't see it a whole lot. Okay. So I find this really interesting after such a long period of time of just nothing. So this kind of corresponds with what we see with Missouri. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. So this is new, far west. So we have one reference in 2024, but we have a long period of time from 2013 to 2023, just nothing. 2012, there were 2. And then, you do see far west here and there, especially 1995 to 2009. But then it just kind of like dies off right here. Now, I wonder if there could be, like, instead of like having a bunch of chatter all of a sudden in general conference, for example, ahead of the purchase of the Kirtland Temple, I wonder if it could also be true the other way, where it's like, okay, we're really thinking about these other properties right now, far west. Are we going to go ahead and build that temple? Well, we're, maybe that's on the back burner. I don't know. I don't think it's like what we saw earlier, like with Times of the Gentiles, where it's like, okay, that the Times of the Gentiles are clearly coming to an end. We don't need to bring that up anymore. But with all the activity that I've seen here in Missouri, I feel like this could be indicative of something. At some point, this temple is going to be announced. I wouldn't be surprised if it's sooner than later, especially with the church's goal of getting temples within an hour of everybody in the church. Well, what was it? They want there to be a temple within an hour's drive of, I think, like 80% of the church. That's the goal. And a lot of these temples have been smaller. I suppose the Far West Temple would probably be built to its original size, but I could see it being kind of like these other temples that service smaller areas, especially the way that Missouri is growing. I did that video a little while ago where the outgoing Elder Morgan, he talked about how things have been pretty incredible here recently. There's been a lot of growth. All 9 metrics that the church watches to determine growth, all 9 of those have been hit in the Kansas City area. So it's not too hard for me to picture. Again, they just created 3 new stakes just within the last few months here in the Kansas City area. Okay, so far west, that's kind of interesting. And what, I don't know, even more interesting than that is I have this phrase, dot the earth with temples. Okay. I did that because in a recent video, we talked about Elder Bednar and how he recently said, do you remember the day when people would say, someday in the future, the temples will dot the earth? And then Elder Bednar said, that day is now. You're living in it right now. It's not off in the future. We have now arrived at that time. So what's interesting is that Far West, the signature here for Far West, it pretty well it pretty well parallels dot the earth for some reason. Dot the earth has to do with the building of temples, the construction of many, many, many temples, and Far West matches it. Almost as though they go hand in hand. I don't know. Is it just coincidence? Of course, some people are going to take that point of view. I don't think so. I don't think so. Is that an indication that Far West is, they've been thinking about it for a while? It could be. I don't know. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. When you look at these terms, Missouri, how it matches Kirtland Temple, Jackson County, how it comes to life, Far West, how you have this weird stretch of time right here where it's radio silence, but it also parallels dot the earth with temples. I don't know. Okay, and then we have Anomaly. Now this one, we have not heard Anomaly in this length of time, from 2007 until present. The last time we heard it was 2006. It comes up a lot less frequently in General Conference, more so around early 80s, 70s, and 60s. That's that same period of time that we were talking about where the church was doing all this stuff with the lands in Missouri, including purchasing land at Anomaly. So this kind of makes sense why there would be kind of an uptick around this time frame. And you go back and you hardly see it. There's just like 3 times before this period of the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. So the longest stretch of time since 1942 that we've gone without Anomaly being mentioned in General Conference is the period that we're in right now, from 2007 to 2025. I don't think that has anything to do with abandoning Anomaly. I know that that's not the case because they've renovated it. They've put up new signs, a new bathroom, and they continue to maintain it. Is it radio silence because maybe something's in the works? I don't know. And then lastly, we have Independence, Missouri, and that's pretty similar to Anomaly. It's the same type of signature. We're talking about the same time frames. We do have a few more mentions in the 90s and early 2000s, but aside from that, it's pretty much the same as Anomaly. So I feel like there's a reason for that, because let's pretend that, let's see, how should I phrase this? Let's say that these things didn't really matter. Okay. But say that they did come up just every now and again in General Conference as someone's talking about history of the church. And they're like, oh, remember the law of tithing was revealed at Far West. Somebody's giving a talk about tithing and they decide to include the story of Far West and how that was revealed there. So if these things did not matter, like there wasn't any sort of like future prophecy or anything like that, what you would expect to see is just random, you just see a random, oh my gosh, words are failing me right now. Like it'd be much more sporadic. It'd be more regular. The frequency would probably be just the same. It'd be like a very low frequency term, but you'd see it just every now and again. But I don't think that you would see just like these sudden, like long stretches of time or the upticks. I feel like these indicate that something is going on. I don't know what they are, but in the case of the Kirtland Temple, this corresponded with the Kirtland Temple coming back into the church. I can't predict the future, But all I can say is that this right here does not appear normal. When we go back in time, it doesn't appear normal. That's all. So that's why I'm calling it an anomaly. I feel like there's an anomaly going on right now with all these places. Only time will tell. But let's just remember what happened with the Kirtland Temple. Just one day, all of a sudden, out of the blue, we got news from church news and newsroom that the church had purchased the temple. Just like that, just out of nowhere. On my channel, we were looking at Community of Christ's financials because they post that stuff on their website. And they talk about the financial situation of the church and their strategy to turn things around. And they were talking about selling historic assets. And so we were looking at that and thinking, I mean, if it gets bad enough, will they sell the Kirtland Temple? And then one day they just did. There was no chatter that we knew of. I didn't know to look for these things in general conference. There were no, I hadn't come across any rumors. None of you had sent me anything. I started my channel in 2021, the year that they started talks, and I never got an email. I never saw a comment. There weren't any like people on YouTube making rumor videos. I heard that the church is in talks. Nothing. It just came out of the blue. Although it wasn't too surprising because what we saw with Community of Christ financials. So how do we know that the same thing won't happen with announcing Far West? In this next general conference, even. It could happen. You might think, oh, there's not enough people over there. Maybe there is. Or maybe the church anticipates a lot of growth in this area. Or maybe it has crossed a certain threshold to where they could do a temple. You just never know. You just never know. And there could be other announcements too. Someday we could see the announcement that the temple lot has been purchased in Independence. Or you could see, maybe some significant development with Adamonte if the church decides to do something with it. There is a temple site there. Maybe at some point we're going to have the temple there, and that'll be announced. So there's just all sorts of possibilities, but again, at risk of, repeating myself, it seems like there's something going on. This right here, everything that we're looking at right here, does not seem to match what's normal as you go back in time. So make of that what you will. But that's all I have for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.